Hello and welcome to KG Law. I'm Kelly Bagel Green, the owner and founder of KG Law here in Sterling Heights, Michigan. So today we're going to talk about parenting time and what does joint physical custody entail. So joint physical custody is when the court creates basically the right for parenting time to happen with the other parent, the non-custodial parent. So your custodial parent is the one who is your primary, and we need kind of the right to have visitation. So if somebody has sole legal visitation, if they're the sole parenting time, there isn't a parenting time schedule established. There you have a non-custodial parent who doesn't necessarily, probably isn't involved for whatever reason, but they've lost their right in some ways to have parenting time. So you're going to see most of the time, if you have a minor child, the parents will share joint physical custody. They both have that right to have the child in their custody and care. So then we have to set up what is called a visitation or parenting time schedule. It used to always be called visitation. Now it's called parenting time. So what does each parent's parenting time actually look like? And the courts, there's the default. Every county will have a specific default, and that's usually available on the county website under Friend of the Court rules and regulations, or that. It used to be that that's just what it was, and so you have like the weekend fun parent. Courts have moved away from that. We now call it parenting time because it's really, you're not visiting your children, you're parenting your children. So some of the default parenting times that I am most familiar with here in the Tri-County area is the every other weekend, and then on the off week you have like a dinner or an overnight. I've seen them as we can get really creative, but basically the non-custodial parent is going to have the right of parenting time unless the other parent can demonstrate things, and it's by the standard of clear and convincing evidence, which if you guys want later on down the road, we can certainly discuss that. But it's basically, in this case, the visitation with the non-custodial parent, if it's going to endanger the child's physical, mental, or emotional health. That's the standard, and you have to meet that burden by what's called clear and convincing. So if we generally leave it up to the parents to decide what the parenting time schedule will look like between the two of them. Again, you usually split the major holidays, Christmas, Christmas Eve, New Year's Eve, 4th of July, Labor Day, Memorial Day, Easter, Thanksgiving. I believe there's 10 or 11 holidays that are included. Then they're also going to split some of the school vacations. Middle winter break gets split. Summer breaks, there's usually, the default is 3 non-consecutive weeks during the summer with the non-custodial parent. You'll split Christmas break, and Christmas break is one of those funny ones that we've had come up in the last couple years now with the way the schools are doing it. It used to be that you would split it right down the middle, and now then we move to one parent will have them from the time that school lets out until Christmas Eve or Christmas morning. I always think it's Christmas Eve, and then the other one's parenting time kicks in until New Year's Eve. And what that's done is it's created this really weird shift in the school calendars, because sometimes if Christmas is on a Friday or a Saturday, school may let out on Thursday, which is Christmas Eve day, or even the day before, and then all of a sudden you're switching, and you're not going to see, it ends up being where it's like a 2 or 3 days that the one parent has, and then the following parent has almost like a week, or has like the full week, and then the kids go back to the first parent for like 2 days, and it's just really uneven. So we really look at that calendar, and there may be times where that means a little bit more shifting and juggling of back and forth with the kid, but again, it's to make sure that time's split more evenly. So we're going to look at all of those. We're going to look at and then some schools are not really, they're not letting out for Easter. They still have school on Catholic terms of Good Friday, and then Easter is on Sunday, so they may have like a 3 or 4 day weekend, but that's it. But then they have a huge midwinter break. So are we dividing that in half, or are we just going to rotate it on even years that are with mom, on odd years are with dad? So we're going to look at that. So the courts are pretty flexible, and what they want is they want parents to work together and find what works best. I, you know, part of the thing is understanding that overnights also count in the child support calculation, but really it shouldn't factor into your decision on what days work best for you and your child to go back and forth. I've seen them do week on, week off. We've had five-day splits. We've had 5-2-2 splits. Just a wide variety. I have one family where they do what's called nesting. And that's where the kids stay in the home and the parents rotate in and out of the house on a I think they do a week on, week off sort of thing, and their exchange day is on Sunday. Um, it can get as creative as needs be to meet your child's needs. Um, Certainly, this is all done on the caveat that both parents live fairly close. The court is going to look at you a little oddly, or your agreement, if mom and dad or the two parents live 2 hours apart, and we're going to do while person A takes them to school on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, person B gets them on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and they rotate Sundays, the court's going to look like, how is that going to work with school when you live 2 hours away? And around here, a lot of our schools start very early in the morning, sometimes between 7 and 8. That means that child's got to be up at like 4 in the morning in order to make it turn. The court's not going to think very favorably of that kind of agreement. We've had them where I have one case from years ago. Dad was very concerned about parenting time. He did not want to be just the weekend dad. He wanted to be fully present in his children's life. And mom dug her feet in, and we knew for a fact that it really came down to the overnights involved, because it does impact child custody, or it affects support. And mom was very relying very heavily on having that a certain dollar amount for support. So we got a little creative. Dad had the ability to be home from work, to go in earlier so that he was off and could meet the kids at the bus. And mom didn't. So we did it so that he picked up kids from the bus. He had them every night, watching his kids, helping with homework, doing dinner until 7 o'clock at night, usually closer to 8 when mom got off work and could get back home to get the kids. So the kids slept during the week at her house. But when you talked about waking hours of actual parenting time, dad clearly had far more hours of that than mom, and then they would rotate on the weekends. And dad also got one overnight during the week, every week. And so we were able to get a little creative and meet both their needs, because then dad really had a bulk of the valuable parenting time, and mom got the overnights that she wanted to count for child support. I have some where dad lives out of state, so he can't do an every other weekend or a week on, week off because of school. But when school's not in session, he gets 90% of those times. So anything that's 4 days or longer, he has the right to have parenting time, as long as and we've worked in that he will pay for the transportation back and forth. So again, you can get really creative in order to meet everybody's needs, but the primary need is making sure that the child's needs or children's needs to see both parents and have both parents in their lives as equally as possible um, are at the forefront for those things. And so that's kind of what the courts here will look at when they're doing parenting time schedules. The other things are, again, the younger the child, the shorter those visiting times are going to be. If I have a child who's 6 months or younger and is still breastfeeding or whatever, those visits may be more frequent, but they're going to be very short. They're going to be 2 hours. They're going to be three. They're going to be short little ones. If there's a reasonable likelihood of abuse or neglect, those visits may be supervised. They may be very short in the duration. If a child has special needs, um, maybe your child is in a wheelchair or those kinds of things. Those are going to factor in. If person B's home isn't wheelchair accessible, but child is in wheelchair, that's certainly going to limit, change the way they think, and those times. If there's a likelihood of abuse, that's going to change when and where and what parenting time will look like. If a parent has made threats or has kept the child away beyond the parenting time agreement and failed to return, those are going to impact things. Or the flip side is, I have several cases where, parent B, wanted 50-50 or, all this extra parenting time, but they never use it. And they're constantly going, nope, parent A, you keep the kid, whatever. At that point, then we're going to look at maybe filing a motion to modify the parenting time so that, one, the parenting time order that the judge signs off on, the latest copy, that's always what the judge will enforce, and that's what determines other things as well. Child custody will always drive what the child support numbers are overall. I mean, obviously, incomes impact that too, but those are the things that we look for when we're talking about parenting time orders. And again, you can get as creative as need be within limits that, that will make sure that your child gets to see and have parenting time with both parents equally. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to KG Law here in Sterling Heights, Michigan.